Hey there everyone, so XAI backed by Elon Musk has released their much awaited Grok 4 model. We have been eagerly waiting for this model and finally we have it. So without further ado, let's get into the details. So if you head over to the Open Router webpage, you can already use this model if you don't want to pay for the subscription. Talking about the context length, the model has 256k context and it starts from $3 per million input tokens pricing and $15 per million output tokens. Let's have a look at the competition as well. So Gemini 2.5 Pro, as you guys know, has a 1 million context and it starts from $1.25 per million input tokens and $10 per million output tokens. And as you know, it is set starting at, so if you move over to the bottom, you can see that after a certain length of conversation, the pricing does change and it changes to $2.50 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. We saw similar kind of things in the previous model as well. As you can see in Grok as well, the price actually doubles after a certain length. Now let's talk about OpenAI O3. So OpenAI O3 again has a 200k context. It's slightly lower than Grok 4, but let's look at the pricing. So the pricing is $2 per million input tokens and $8 per million output tokens. It's nearly a 90% decrease from its original pricing, and that is very nice to see. By the way guys, if you use OpenAI's API, there is an option called flex processing, and with the help of that, the price actually gets reduced by 50%. So this can go up to $1 per million input tokens and $4 per million output tokens. Yeah, but at the cost of speed and response time. So you will get slower response times and you will have to wait a lot for the response. At least that is what they say. Having said that, let's move to Claude 4 Opus. Again, you can see Claude 4 Opus has 200k context and the pricing is very high on this model. So this model has $15 per million input tokens and $75 per million output tokens. So this was about the pricing guys. This model Grok 4 has similar kind of context compared to the other models. The only model that is better than this is Gemini 2.5 Pro with 1 million context. And talking about the pricing, this model comes at the third place. OpenAI O3 and Gemini 2.5 Pro being better at pricing, and Claude 4 Opus is, not even in the competition. It's very pricey. So that was all about the pricing guys. So how good is this model? Let's get into the benchmarks that were shown. So talking about elephant in the room, humanities last exam. So they spent nearly half of the live stream talking about this humanities last exam benchmark guys. If you remember previously, they didn't even mention this benchmark in the Grok 3 release, but now since their model performs very good at it, so now they are just talking about it. Nowadays you might have seen this trend that companies like to show benchmarks that their model performs best in. Anyways, let's look at the performance. So in the leaks we saw that Grok 4 was able to score 45% in humanities last exam, where the previous best was 21.6%. Is that true? No guys, the leaks were quite ambiguous, and even though you see this 44.4% here, that is not apples to apples comparison. So you have to understand these tests on the right side. These are with the help of tools. Using tools, the models were able to score this. Whereas this is the actual percentage that is listed on humanities last exam website. So here you can see OpenAI O3 scores 21%, Gemini 2.5 Pro slightly ahead scores 21.6%, and Grok 4 scores 25.4%. And you can see at the bottom it is mentioned without any tools. So this is the comparison that is listed over on the website. So we do see some improvement, but it is not absolutely drastic improvement that we saw in the leaks. But if we talk about giving model the tools, then you can see the performance is actually drastically different. O3 scoring 24.9, Gemini 2.5 Pro scoring 26.9%, and Grok 4 38.6% guys. There is another variant called Grok 4 Heavy. I think this is very analogous to Gemini 2.5 Pro Deep Think and OpenAI O3 Pro. The higher thinking variants of the models. So Grok 4 Heavy scores 44.4%. The thing we have to understand is, even with or without the tools, the performance of O3 and Gemini 2.5 Pro doesn't see any big improvement, but with the help of tools, Grok 4 and Grok 4 Heavy seem to be performing very nice. Yeah, we do have a situation where Grok 4 models perform significantly better than the competition, but it is with the help of the tools and everything. The main benchmark is this one, and we do see improvement, but it's not absolutely groundbreaking or something. But there is a benchmark where Grok 4 has absolutely annihilated the competition. We'll be looking at that. Anyways, let's move on to the next benchmark. So GPQA Diamond is a graduate level question and answering dataset, and it mostly compares the reasoning performance of the models. Now you can see OpenAI O3 scores 83.3%, Claude 4 Opus scores 79.6%, and Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 86.4%. So the previous best was 86.4% from Gemini 2.5 Pro, but Grok4 has defeated it slightly with 87.5%. Grok4 Heavy has scored 88.9%. So Grok4 Heavy is one of the first model that is scoring closer to the 89% mark, and we see around 2.5% improvement. So again, it's not very drastic, but we have to understand the benchmark is nearly saturated and few points difference is also very important. Let's move on to AIME 25 benchmark. This is a benchmark that measures the max performance of models, and you can see OpenAI O3 scores 88.9, Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 88, and Claude 4 Opus scores 75.5. So Claude 4 Opus is not very good at max, at least that is what we're able to see. Now without any tool usage, you can see Grok4 scores 91.7%. Again, that's not a very drastic difference, guys. These three bars that you see towards the right, this is with tool use, so let's keep that aside and let's actually compare this. If you look at this only, you can see the improvement is again 1 or 2% improvement, not very big. But when it comes to tool usage, you can see O3 scores 98.4, nearly saturates the benchmark. Grok4 scores 98.8, not very big difference but slightly ahead, and Grok4 Heavy scores 100%. So looking at the benchmarks, it seems that Grok4 is very good at tool usage. That is the reason we are able to see the very drastic improvements when the model is actually given some tools. But this is the main thing that we have to see, the no tool usage. This is what we have been tracking since months. So here you can see this model scores 91.7%. So live code bench LCB is a coding benchmark, and you can see O3 scores 72%, Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 74.2%, and Grok4 without any tool usage scores 79%. So here we see nearly 5% improvement. So here the performance is good. Given the tool usage, we can see the performance slightly improves but not by much. So it seems that when it comes to coding, the model seems to perform very good. Moving on, we have another max benchmark. So this is HMMT, which stands for Harvard's MIT Max Tournament. So it consists of 30 very hard questions and the models have to actually solve it. You can see OpenAI O3 scores 77.5%, Gemini 2.5 Pro was the previous best with 82.5%, and Claude 4 Opus with 58.3. You can see again when it comes to max, the Claude 4 Opus model is not very good at it, but have a look at Grok 4 without any tool usage. It scores 90%, guys. We nearly see an 8% improvement than the previous best. That is nice to see. But having said that, when tool usage is included, you can see the performance again jumps by a lot. We nearly see a 4% improvement with 93.9%, and the Grok 4 heavy model scores 96.7%. So we have to understand that, guys, tool usage is a nice thing, but we have not been tracking these models performance with tool usage enabled or everything. You can see most of the benchmarks that we have tested previously and everything, we don't consider tool usage. So 90% is the one to go, but even then the performance is quite substantial compared to the previous models. Moving on to another benchmark, this is USA Math Olympiad. So again a max benchmark. Again you can see OpenAI O3 scores 21.7%, Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 34.5%, Gemini DeepThink, which is yet to be released, scores 49.4%. So this was mentioned in the blog post that they released, so that is the reason it is present here. And Grok 4 slightly behind with 37.5%. We have to understand Gemini DeepThink is equivalent to O3 Pro and Grok 4 Heavy, utilizing a lot of thinking tokens. So its real competitor is Grok 4 Heavy, and really Grok 4 Heavy is substantially higher with 61.9%. Well, it's actually very fascinating to see that they have not included Frontier Math benchmark. I mean, previously they didn't include Humanities last exam because in benchmarks like those, the performance was not very good. But now since the performance is very good, they have included it, and they have actually been rambling about it for nearly about half of the live stream. So Frontier Math is a very good benchmark to actually see the model's performance in expert level mathematic problems, and the latest model that they have included is Grok 3 Mini. So we'll have to wait and see when they include Grok 4 in Frontier Math, and we'll have to see where it stands. Let's head over to Artificial Analysis website. This is a website where we see benchmarks of a lot of models. Here you can see Grok 4 currently has a artificial analysis intelligence index of 73. So this is better than O3 Pro with 71, and currently Grok 4 is leading the benchmark. Having said that guys, till now you saw that in most of the benchmarks the performance was quite okay and not absolutely groundbreaking. But let me show you a benchmark where Grok 4 absolutely annihilates the competition. This is the ARC-AGI dataset. If you don't know about ARC-AGI, this benchmark tests the spatial reasoning and logical reasoning of models through puzzles based on grids. So you can see a cluster of models here at the bottom, and this is the ARC-AGI 2 benchmark. You can see the previous best was Claude 4 Opus with 8.6%, and it fairly looks like, Claude 4 Opus is really sitting at a very high position compared to the competition. If you look at O3 High, which is the second best, it just scores 6.5%. So all of this seems very nice guys until you include Grok 4. Just have a look at the chart what happens when I include Grok 4. So when I include Grok 4, you can see, so all these models just squish down to below 10%, and just have a look at Grok 4 thinking. It is sitting at a very different level guys. It is scoring 16.2%, nearly double of the previous best that scored 8.6%. If we say Grok 4 has annihilated the competition in this benchmark, that is an understatement. So these were all the benchmarks that were released publicly and stuff like that. Let's head over to our tests. So we are today seeing large reasoning models, and if I head over to our website, you can see the best max model previously was O4 mini high. So looking at the benchmarks, it does seem that Grok 4 reasoning has to be the best max model, but I think we will not be able to know this until Frontier Math has actually released the results for Grok 4. Anyways, I did test Grok 4 reasoning on Frontier Math questions. So there were nearly 5 questions, and if you look at the scores, you can see out of 5 questions, O4 mini high gets 3 questions right, and this has been the first model that has been able to get these many questions correct. Grok 4 reasoning on the other hand just got 2 questions right. So that brings the total to just 2 for Grok 4 reasoning and 3 for O4 mini high. One thing to note is Grok 4 reasoning seems to take very few tokens guys. It doesn't like to ramble a lot and talk very much. I'll be showing you some screenshots and responses that Grok 4 reasoning gave. You can see the lines of code is very small. This is the first time I'm seeing this. The model really doesn't like to talk too much, and it just likes to get the stuff done. So I think if you are generating prompts for anything, writing prompt for other models, I think Grok 4 reasoning will be very good because it seems that it is very token efficient and its responses are not going to be very long and detailed and stuff. By the way, this is what I saw in the API. The experience might be different when you use it on any subscription from XAI. So talking about the max guys, I am not very sure. I will have to wait for the Frontier Math results to come. Only then we can say that Grok 4 is the best max model. And also what I'm thinking is, why didn't they include Frontier Math? I mean, it can't be that they don't know about Frontier Math benchmark. Maybe it could be that the model didn't perform very well in Frontier Math and that's the reason they didn't pick it. But we'll have to see when the results for Frontier Math comes. Talking about the reasoning questions, here I have my 4 very hard questions guys, and if you have been a long time viewer, this is the section that you have been waiting. So these are very hard questions as I said you before, and only these 4 models are the ones who are competing at this level. Any other model is not even close. I mean, they might get the first question, that is the 64 tennis player question right, but after that all these questions are very hard for them. So if you head over to my website and go over to problem collection, you can see all these questions. So talking about the 64 tennis player question, so this is the one you can see, and the answer is also mentioned. So how do these models perform in this question? Talking about Gemini 2.5 Pro, the latest general availability version, it scores a 10 on 10. That is nice to see. Claude 4 Opus, it scores an 8 out of 10. OpenAI O3 scores a 10 out of 10. Grok 4 reasoning, how much does that score? It scores a 10 out of 10. Now you can see Grok 4 reasoning from the beginning is saying that I am in the game and I am not the one to be considered weak. We can see Claude 4 Opus actually falls behind in this particular question. Let's move on to one of my favorite questions, that is seating arrangement. This has been a very hard question and for very long. I mean, since OpenAI O1, there was no model which was able to solve this. And when you look at the scores, you will understand this. If you head over to my website, you can see this is the question, seating arrangement. You have to not just come up with the correct option, but you have to mention the seating arrangement as well. That is what makes this question hard. Let's look at the score. Gemini 2.5 Pro scores just 1 out of 10. And now you understand how hard this question is. Talking about Claude for Opus, it scores 0 out of 10. What about OpenAI O3? OpenAI O3 has been the best model in this particular question up until now. It scores 6 out of 10. I mean, there is no competition, guys. The moment when I saw this, I was shocked by what OpenAI O3 came up with. And if you are my long-time viewer, you might be knowing about this. What about Grok4 reasoning, guys? Does it beat OpenAI O3? Will it be the first model to beat OpenAI O3? It scores 7 out of 10. The very first model to actually beat OpenAI O3 in this particular question, guys. Grok4 reasoning is not yet another model. It is claiming its position, guys. So the next question is jersey number. So I think there has been some issue with the wording here. This should be jersey number, and let me show you the question. So you can see this is the question and this is the jersey numbering alphabetically. So this is a very hard question, guys. Let's look at the performance. Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 0 out of 10. As I said you, this is a very hard question, and let's move on to Claude for Opus. Claude for Opus scores a 1 out of 10. Nice to see. What about OpenAI O3? OpenAI O3 again scores a 1 out of 10. Grok4 reasoning. Grok4 reasoning scores a 0 out of 10. I mean, even I was shocked. I thought that it might at least get a 1. But consistently it was not able to get it right, guys. And I think this is the question that we have to look for in the upcoming models. I don't know how long it will be when we'll actually start to see scores above 5 or something. Will it happen this year? I don't know, but we'll see. Talking about the final question, that is Navy designation. Let me show you the question. So it's a pretty long question, as you can see. The answers and everything is mentioned, guys. You can directly copy the questions and ask any model. So let's move on to the scores. Gemini 2.5 Pro scores a 7 out of 10. So it is comparatively easier when we compare it against seating arrangement or the jersey number question. So Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 7 out of 10. As I said, Claude for Opus scores a 9 out of 10. The reason I included this model is because many people were actually considering Claude for Opus as the best reasoning model, so I had to include this to have more data to understand the scenario of which is the best model. Talking about OpenAI O3, it scores a 5 out of 10. So you can see in this particular question, OpenAI O3 is actually far behind than Claude for Opus and Gemini 2.5 Pro. What about Grok4 reasoning? Grok4 reasoning scores a 10 out of 10. It every single time Grok4 reasoning gets it right. So if you now look at the total scores, that is 18 out of 40 for Gemini 2.5 Pro, 18 out of 40 again for Claude for Opus, and the previous best 22 out of 40 for OpenAI O3. But Grok4 reasoning annihilates the competition with 27 out of 40, a 5-point lead. OpenAI O3 had a 4-point lead compared to Claude for Opus and Gemini 2.5 Pro, but Grok4 reasoning has a 5-point lead against the previous best with 27 out of 40. So if I head over to the model recommendations, it is clear that the best reasoning model is going to be Grok4 without a doubt, and by a very high margin. Talking about the best max model, I am still in doubt. I mean, the benchmark shows that Grok4 is the best, but I will wait for frontier math to come up so that I can change it, because even if the performance between Grok4 and O4 Mini High is same, O4 Mini High is cheaper, so comparatively it has better advantage to stay here. Talking about the best backend coding and front-end coding model, this we'll see in the coding comparison video. By the way, they have mentioned that they will be releasing a coding variant. In the leaks, we clearly saw that ARC-AGI is preparing for a coding model, and in their timeline they have mentioned about a coding model which should release sometime in August. Then by September they will be having multimodality in Grok4. Currently Grok4 is not multimodal, it is text only, and even if it has multimodality, is very bad at it. And by October they will be releasing video generation model. So now we have Grok4, and since there is nearly a month before they release their coding model, so we'll be testing Grok4 on front-end coding and back-end coding. Having said that, let's talk about the subscription. So you have two subscription tiers of Super Grok. Super Grok has $30 per month subscription, and if you want to use the Grok4 Heavy model, you have to go to Super Grok Heavy, which is $300 per month, guys. I mean, OpenAI started with this very high pricing options with $200. Google Gemini one up that with $250, and now XAI is going even ahead with $300. I mean, I don't think you should pay $300 just to access a chat model, but it's up to you based on your use case. So this was all about Grok 4, guys. It is, according to the benchmarks and even from my testing, the best reasoning and the smartest model, guys. I hope you liked the comparison and the information that I shared. If you like the effort, please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more such updates. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one.